gigantic thing that takes up my entire dining room wall. But somewhere when I was planning the garden for the year and the whole property where I'm going to put fruit trees and berry vines and stuff, I decided that I really was struggling graphing it out on graph paper or mapping it out on graph paper. And so I decided I need to make something that was 1 square per foot. And we live on 4.5 acres. So here's what happened. Yeah. Well, I don't have any art yet on our dining room wall anyway, so whatevs. I'll take you in closer to see what we're doing. Okay, so down here in the empty space, this is actually, the house is somewhere right about in here, and I didn't bother wasting the time taping and putting up paper and the stuff to put all of this stuff right here because it's not really plantable. The house is here, and then our one flat space is out here, and we're going to use that maybe for a fire pit or gathering space elsewhere. And in the front is a large steep hill, and I can't plant anything there even if I wanted to because that's where our septic is somewhere in there, and then there's a driveway, and so I just left that out. But if we zoom in, straight off the back door of the house, my garden, I turn left out the back door, and in the far corner is where the main vegetable garden is. There is a baby maple tree the previous owners had in there, some sort of other tree I have not yet identified, but it's full grown. My kids like to climb it. And my compost is in here somewhere. And then this is the main vegetable garden. The previous owner, he was an Army guy and he put in 2 raised boxes. He wanted to try square foot gardening. He loved it, but he was out of country all the time, still is. So that kind of got left unattended, and I ended up planting in that this past fall, and it worked out great. And so what I decided to do, because our land is sloped down this way, I decided that planter boxes would make it easier to do some things. And then other things I was going to try to build up and flatten out a little bit. So my husband and I built, we have not yet sunk them into the ground to be level with these, but we built 4 square ones that match in size for that side and 4 for this side. And this allows me to expand. If I decide I like the raised beds, I will expand them. I can work with the pattern any way I want over in this area. I had originally planned 8 boxes and I made my husband build me 9 because I realized it would be better in our soil to plant potatoes in a raised bed as well. So here's what's going in my general plan. I always call this working plan because gardening kind of changes as you go. If you're a gardener, you know. So I'm going to put celery and Chinese celery in this first box. It is my son's favorite vegetable. I've never tried the Chinese celery, but it's pink and I couldn't resist. Experimental one. I'm going to put some strawberries here and here. There was pre-existing asparagus here, and I decided to leave it since asparagus takes a long time to grow. I'm just going to take that up, and strawberries and asparagus do well together. And I'm probably going to plant strawberries straight in the ground elsewhere, and I will get to that in another part of the property. Right in here, peppers, like bell peppers, jalapenos, and some radishes, which can grow together and actually can grow kind of in the same space because peppers grow up and radishes grow down. Right here, I'm going to put in kale and lettuce. Strawberries and asparagus we've already talked about. Ooh, my battery's about to die. Carrots and onions in this box. We go through a lot of carrots, so I might have to expand that. Beets and spinach in this box. Fresh cucumbers, like fresh eating cucumbers in this one, and pickling cucumbers in this one, and I'm going to put in a cattle panel arch between these so that they have room to grow up, and I might put on the outsides some fencing stuff too. Okay, so my phone battery died and I had to plug it in for a while. So we ended with the boxes, the fresh and pickling cucumbers. I may have to add more. I'm not sure those boxes will be enough, especially the pickling. Throwing in one box here, I just slapped this up here, but that is another 4x4 raised bed for potatoes. And then these are what aren't going to go in boxes. I'm going to use cattle panels and T-posts like I did at my old house in 3 rows. I may add another row depending on how much space. Somewhere over here is my well cap, and I just want to make sure that I'm staying far enough away from that. So this row is sugar snap peas, this row is tomatoes, this row is green beans, 2 more rows of tomatoes, and a row of corn. I might move the corn over down here in more of a patch. That would be like a double closely planted row because, you know, corn has to be close to each other for pollination. But if I move the corn down here in a patch, then I will add another row of tomatoes, because now that I've planted out and looked at it, I'm pretty sure I won't have enough tomatoes with that. Anyways, so the first section of the property, coming back to it, this is kind of a downward sloping toward the house. Right down here is the only flat area, and I let the kids play there. So there's a space up here by our back area, a tree. I'm not sure what that tree is. Yeah, not sure. In between that tree and this other tree that I don't know what it is, I'm going to put the blueberries, and I'm planting a row across between the trees, and I'm going to make it 2 rows deep this year, maybe, depending on if I can afford that many blueberries. But that gives me a little room to build out towards the house with the blueberry patch. And then between that tree and this power pole, I'm going to put in raspberries. And again, I'm going to start with a row, and I'm able to build out this way. I have to be careful with this area because that power pole goes diagonally across here, not that close to the raspberries, like this, towards the house. So I can't, there's no line overhead, there's an underground line, and I don't want to dig into that. So then right here, kind of hard to see, these are the squiggle mark. These are some trees that separate the 2 halves of our property, because this half and this half used to be 2 separate properties. What you can't see down here in the front, an area that I'm not going to plant out this year, there's a driveway here. There used to be a house here that burnt down. The people decided not to rebuild. The people that owned our house at the time bought this property from those people. So when we bought our house, we bought all 4 acres. But this area right now is pretty much not plantable. I'm going to keep away from it anyways because we might put a barn there in the future. But back up here, the power pole is really where it separates the 2 halves. So this side is going to be raspberries. This side will be blackberries. I know you're not supposed to plant them together, but I've also heard people say it doesn't matter. And these will, it looks close on paper, but in reality, they're going to be like 30 feet apart. And I might even move the blackberries over further because really I have way more room here than I need along the back fence. This is grapevines going along the back. And then I have some space over here where our property ends is this tree line right here that separates us from another property. And along the back fence, I was going to put like a little peach tree patch. I'm only planting 1 peach this year. I was looking for a nectar plum but couldn't find it, and that will be a future peach. I don't know what type. We have an existing pear tree here. I'm not a huge fan of pears, but I'm going to leave it for now. It is productive. And then below that is another tree. I do not know what this tree is. I think it's something in the peach family. It might be an apricot. We bought the house in late July. It was too late to tell what it was, but the leaves and the roundness of the fruit that was kind of all shriveled up and dead kind of made me think it could be a peach or an apricot or something in that family. So down here, when you get by the front road, so this is actually the bottom of the property here. There's like a ditch with grass in it here, like a water drain ditch. But from the road far enough out, I'm going to put in 3 cherry trees. That's what the purple is. I'm only planting 2 this year, probably 1 next year. I do want to eventually plant some nut trees along in here too. I just didn't have room in the budget this year. All these red flags are different apples. Some I have ordered, some I'm hoping to add on to, and so the far end of the property really is kind of going to be the fruit orchard. And I have plenty of room in here next to these trees and stuff to either add more apples or other trees, or maybe I can move the nut trees up that way if I want to, depending on what the future plans are. But that is really what's going on this year. We've got the vegetable garden is my main thing, and then really trying to just get some stuff in the ground that takes several years to fruit so that I'm not putting myself further behind. That's what feels all pressing about the fruit trees and vines and stuff, is that eventually, they take 2 to 7 years to fruit depending on what you're planting. So those are the main plans so far: blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, grapes, peaches, apples, cherries, and vegetables. Those are what are so far on my list, and that is the garden plan for this year. And I will take you along the journey as I plant and harvest.